Hey guys, in this video, we're going to learn how to type math using a programming language called LaTeX. And this is the standard that's used in universities and in academic journals for when you want to type math and you want to make it look very nice and professional. So the simplest way to get started with this is to go to overleaf.com. There's many free cloud editors that you can use. I personally like Overleaf the best. You can also download it directly, but that requires some more steps. So if you want to get started as soon as possible, I recommend just going to a free website like Overleaf. So I've already registered an account on Overleaf, and it's a new account, so it has no projects that are already made. So we'll start by creating your first project. And there's a lot of templates that you can look at. For example, you can look at sample academic journals, books, homework assignments, and then you can just modify them for your own purposes. But we're just going to start with a blank project for now. So let's call this Hello World. Okay, so when we create this document, we automatically get a bunch of preset commands. For example, it already makes the title for us because we called it Hello World. So this is what the title would look like. The author, because my account is Mathematical Smorgasbord, this would be where the author shows up. And what I will do is I will say, I'm going to change it to, let's say you want to give your first name and last name. So let's do first name, last name. The date, October 2020. And then up top here, you have document class, which is article. Don't worry too much about this command. And same thing with this command. This is just for inputting Unicode characters. So these commands, just leave them in your document, but don't actually worry about tweaking them or anything. These will be important to tweak depending on the date and your name and the title, of course. Now, whenever you begin the document, you have to start with a begin document command. And then you have to follow up with an end document at the very end. Otherwise, LaTeX will give you an error. And then in the middle, you have the make title. So this actually creates the title that you set. And you notice here, it shows you a preview of what's going on. So I'm going to minimize this for now, just so that we have a nicer view. It's easier to see everything. Now you notice the preview is not what we actually want because we changed the name to first name last. You notice in the preview it's still the old name. Well, that's because we have to recompile it every time we change it. So we're going to click recompile, and now it updates the changes that we made. Well, okay, let's say we don't want to keep pressing recompile, so let's do one thing. Let's actually change the settings for the recompile, set it to auto compile. You see it says auto compile, so let's set it to that. Auto compiling is on. So now whenever we make a change, it'll automatically update it in this PDF preview. Okay, so we have the title, we have first name, last name, we have the date, and then to create the title, you type /make title, /make title. Now sections, those are made by doing /section and then typing in the name of the section. So name of the section. And now you see it's automatically recompiling, and it changed the name to name of the section. So we're going to change this back to introduction for now. Okay, so in the introduction, I can type whatever I like. So let's just say, hello, this is the introduction where we will discuss introduction. Okay, just whatever, just type random stuff. Now, the thing with LaTeX is that it's not an editor where what you see is what you get. You know, like Microsoft Word, for example, the way you see it is the way that it'll show up on your document. But here, the way it's written is not the way that it shows up on the actual document, as you can see. And this is even more pronounced in cases like making new paragraphs, for example. So if I want to make a new paragraph, let's say I just skip to the next line and say indent. New par. Okay, so let's see what happens. Oh, look at how it updates. It doesn't skip the line like we expect it to. It continues onto the old line. So the thing you need to know with paragraphs is you actually need to skip an extra line, and then it'll automatically indent for you. So, for example, like this. And now it starts a new paragraph and it indents it. So let's just say, yeah, new paragraph starts here. Okay, so these are little things you can work with them, and if there's some commands that you're not sure how to do, you can look them up, and I'll explain what the good resources are for that. But right now, you came here to learn how to type in math, right? So these are just some basic things that are not terribly interesting. Okay, so let's make another section now, because let's start talking about certain math pieces that you want to type. So let's do how to type exponents. Okay, so in this section, we're going to type exponents. Okay, so let's say we want to type something like x squared. So whenever you type in math, you need to surround it by these dollar signs. So you need a dollar sign in the front and you need a dollar sign in the back. And overleaf automatically wraps the dollar sign. So if you make one dollar sign, it'll automatically make the second one. Now nothing showed up over here because we haven't actually typed anything inside the dollar signs just yet. So we're going to type in exponents. So we're going to do something like x squared. And it's as you would expect. You use a caret to denote the exponent. X would be our variable, and the power is x squared. So now when you look at the document, and I'll expand it so maybe it's easier to see, this renders as x squared. So now sometimes we want a more complicated exponent. So say your exponent is really involved. Now let's say I want to do x to the 0.5. So let's try that. And what happens with the autocompile? Let's take a look. Okay, so when you see this exponent, you realize, oh, it didn't actually cover the entire 0.5. It only raised the 0. So when your exponent is a little more complicated, where it has multiple characters, you need to surround it in these curly braces. Then it'll raise it to the entire 0.5. So this is going to get fixed now. There you go. So this is a more complicated exponent, like x to the 0.5. Okay, so this is exponents. Now let's say, how do we make fractions? So new section for that. Okay, so here's the command for fractions. First you start with the dollar signs, and then you do \frac, and then you have one space for the numerator, which is this bracket over here. You put the numerator in here, and you put the denominator in the second bracket. So let's do numerator and denominator. And here's how it renders. Let's take a look at that. Numerator over denominator. So you see it becomes a fraction. So let's try an example with actual numbers. So ⅓ would be /frac, and then I put a 1, and then a 2. And you see how it compiles, 1/2. Okay, now sometimes our expression is going to be so complicated that we would like for us to put it on its own line, give it its own space. So this is called display mode. So what you do for display mode is instead of $1 on each side, you do $2 on each side. Okay, so here's what you do. So you do double double. So first, actually, let's look at what the expression would look like without display mode. So I want to type an equation. I'm going to type in just a quadratic equation. So let's do x squared plus 5 equals 3/4. 3/4. Okay, and let's just keep it in the same line, even though it'll automatically be in the same line. So now you look at what happens. It's right in line with what we have. It's part of this paragraph. But if it's an important equation, we need to give it its own space. So instead of having $1 on each side, let's have 2. Okay. And now you notice it gives it its own space. Okay, so we've covered most of the basics. We've covered exponents, we've covered fractions, and we've covered equations, or display mode. So now there's just some extra things. And of course, we're not going to cover everything there is to know about LaTeX because that's a very deep topic. But this is enough for you to get started with whatever you want to type on your own. So the last thing I want to talk about would be lists. And then I'll give you some more resources that you can consult. So we have two types of lists. We have bulleted lists and we have numerical lists. And you can do other kinds of lists as well, but these are the two basic ones. So if you want to do a bulleted list, so you do begin, because we're beginning a list, and you do enumerate. So what this does, so you do begin enumerate, and then this closes it in end enumerate. And so this is not a bulleted list, this is a numerical list, enumerate. So now for every item that you make, for example, the first item in the list, you start it with a /item command. So this is the first item in the list. And then let's make another item. This is the second in the list. Okay, and so on. Now, looking at our document, look at what happened. It made each of these items. Now you can do a bulleted list, which I was promising before, with the itemize command. So you do begin itemize. Now, this editor automatically closes it for you by adding an end itemize and starting the item. This is something that you want to remember to always include by yourself, even if you're even if your editor doesn't do this for you. So let's just call this list something. So let's just say, now we will make a list, okay? Just to say that we're starting a bulleted list. Okay. So this is the first bullet. And so on. This is the second bullet. Okay, so it showed up on the next page. So now, one thing that you're probably realizing is these margins look really bad. I mean, look at all this extra space that's going on, right? And then look at all this margin that's just being wasted. It seems like a very small chunk of the page is actually being used for text. So there is a way to fix that. And it involves the preamble of your document, these beginning commands. So we'll add a command, usepackage, called usepackage fullpage. So this will change your margins so that it looks normal, basically. Okay, yeah, so these margins now look fine. So this is just a very quick and easy command that you can do to change it so that it looks normal. Okay. So we end the itemize, the bulleted list. Okay, so now these are the basics. Now you have pretty much everything you need to know to type a basic math document. Now, of course, there's always going to be special characters that you don't know how to type just yet. And so here's how you deal with that. So let's say, for example, I want to type a Greek letter. Okay, so how do I type Greek letters? Well, I'm thinking of maybe the letter epsilon, right? So I had this letter in my mind, but how do I actually type it? And let's say it's a Greek letter that I don't even know the name of. I'm not even going to know how to look it up, right? So thankfully, there's a very nice resource for this. It's called detexify. So you can just Google detexify. You go to detexify.curelabs.org. And so you just draw whatever image you like. So let's say we want to know how to type an epsilon. So we draw an epsilon. And now you notice this gives us the command for epsilon. And you can use any one of these commands. So some of them require you to type in some extra packages, like this one, for example. We could do that. If you don't want to do that, you can just do this simple one, /epsilon. So that's what we'll try. /epsilon. And now when you look at the document, you notice that it renders. So look at it closely, you see that it does indeed render. Okay, so here are the resources that you should check out if you want to, when you're actually making a document. So let's do section, resources. And let's make a bulleted list, so itemize, to keep track of these resources. So the first one was what I already told you. It's detexify.curelabs.org. Another website that's very useful is Wikibooks. So here's what that would look like. Okay, so this contains all the bare bones things that you would need in order to type in LaTeX. But this has maybe a little bit more than all the basics that you need to know. So this is very good in the sense that if you're just a beginner with this, you can learn pretty much everything you'll need and a little bit more than what you'll need. In fact, it has different types of ways for typing formulas, for example. We mentioned this where you enclose it with dollar signs or double dollar signs if you want display mode, different symbols. All these different kinds of symbols, for example, matrices, how to use them, different kinds of fonts. For example, math sometimes use these Greek fonts for certain things. These Blackboard fonts. Okay, so all of these basic symbols and fonts that you use in math, it teaches you how to use all of that. So this is another great resource. So let me copy this. Okay, so this is the other resource that you want to check out. And then finally, if you have a very specific question or a very difficult question that doesn't get answered in with these two sources, then you want to check out Text Stack Exchange. So just like how there's Math Stack Exchange, there's a Stack Exchange just for LaTeX. And with this resource, you just type in a question just like you would at Math Stack Exchange. And basically, any question that you have with LaTeX, very likely it'll already be answered in the Text Stack Exchange. And if not, there's a host of very experienced people who will be able to guide you in answering your question. So this is all you need to get started with LaTeX. I hope you have a really fun time experimenting with this. It's a great resource. It's very fun to make a math document and have it typeset very beautifully. So I hope this video is useful for you guys. If you found this useful, hit the like button and of course, subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.